Hi, this is Mark Von Drasek, a physics teacher at Evanston Township High School, just north of Chicago. And this is the second video in a series that is introducing SEL, social emotional learning, and why it's become such an important piece of the education system around the country, particularly coming out of the COVID pandemic. Now, in the first video, we introduced kind of broadly what SEL is, the pieces of it. And these other videos that are coming up in this series will get into the details of all those different parts. For the second video, I wanted to focus on why we need it. Why is SEL such a big thing right now? And why should we include it within the school experience of all students around the country? So here's the Castle definition of SEL, which was introduced in the first video. And at Evanston Township High School, we've done a slight modification of this by adding 4 words. This idea of identity, we want to really focus on the reality that we all have and that society has multiple and intersecting identities. And that we don't need just supportive relationships. Sometimes we have to restore relationships. We need restorative type practices in order to do this type of work. But the reasons why we need SEL, especially now, is because, let's face it, our kids are in crisis. There's been a steady rise in the number of teens feeling sad and hopeless over the last 20 years. We all know it. If you're an experienced teacher in particular, you probably have seen an increase in the number of students who suffer from anxiety and depression, who are on medications for that. We have record numbers of teens feeling suicidal and actually following through with suicide. We know that our students are many of them, most of them, are actually addicted to cell phones and social media, a major issue in all schools right now. School and community safety. For young people, the number one cause of death is kids being shot to death. And we've had record numbers of school shootings over the last years. And just the uncertainty that our kids' generations face, that we're leaving them with. Climate change, the culture wars, and the politics that they see every day of their lives now, the inequities, rapid changes in technologies, political division, jobs, artificial intelligence, all of this uncertainty, our kids are really, really struggling with this. And what does their future hold? So personally, I find this graph to be really disturbing. It's a steady rise and then an acceleration over the last few years, going through COVID, for example, of kids feeling persistently sad and even hopeless. And of course, it's going to vary by groups, and it's a staggering number of LGBTQ plus students who are feeling hopeless right now, especially now with the culture wars in 2022, 2023. Mental health at my school, at Evanston Township High School, this is pretty much on par with the national average. When we do screening for depression, basically a quarter of our students are suffering from major depressive disorder, and girls are more likely to fall into this than boys. The first semester, if you compare the first semesters of 2020, as the COVID pandemic was starting through and the shutdowns were happening, through coming out of COVID, there's a 71% increase in the suicide risk assessment of students. Major depressive episodes over the last 2 decades. And again, these charts, it's more prevalent for girls, but it would be even much higher for LGBTQ students. We know that students are on their phones constantly. It's been through studies, the average right now is about 7 hours of screen time outside of school. And this is per day. The number of school shootings in the United States, major rise over the last 5 to 7 years. And SEL has not really been a thing in schools, even though Castle came out with the standards that we're going through in this series 30 years ago. So it's not new, it's been here, but very few schools have identified with it and have actually used it. And that's because we've been stuck in this traditional mindset of education, that kids are products of the schools and education systems. So this idea that kids are identical beings is nonsense. They're human beings. They're complex, and, unique individuals, a mixed bag of emotions and feelings and complexity and strengths and weaknesses. SEL helps us to identify that and to work with that and to have every student, every unique individual come through their education experience in a very positive way and be able to adapt to life. So as mentioned in the opening video, SEL is not something new on our plate. We should think of it as the plate. We need kids to be healthy and happy and to be able to adapt to any situation with others, other people, if we want them to find success, if we want them to be healthy and happy, if we want them to be successful in life. Equity then is the table that the plate sits upon. We have to recognize the diversity. We have to recognize what our kids are going through. We know that if any of us are hurting in the heart, mind, or spirit, we're simply not going to live, learn, achieve, or perform at our best. We all know that as adults. We have to recognize this and help our students find the skills and practice the skills that will help them do all this in a very complex world. How do we do it? Well, as we're going to see, we need to embed SEL and the skills associated with it into the student's experience. We all have to do this. And ideally, it's a K through 12 process where kids are getting this exposure and practice with SEL throughout their entire academic careers so that when they are on their own in the world, they can adapt and be successful. And I'll leave you just again with that visual, the SEL wheel of how these 5 competencies interact and how they sit there. These will be the things that we focus on and try to identify what that looks like within your classroom.